Welcome to the European Association for Higher Education Advancement's YouTube and podcast channel. Today, we're diving into a topic that's super important, student mental health.
Absolutely. It's something that often gets kind of pushed aside.
Totally overshadowed.
Yeah, by all
the academic pressures and everything going on.
Yeah, cool.
So we're really going to try to bring it to the forefront today, and we're going to be using this article.
Yes.
From the European Association for Higher Education Advancement.
Great article.
Called The Importance of Mental Health Support for Students. And I think that really sums it up well.
It really does.
We're going to explore how institutions can do a better job
Yes.
of supporting students.
Yes.
And how we can break down the stigma surrounding mental health, which I think is huge.
Rare.
Barrier. Yeah.
Yeah.
So one of the things that really stood out to me right at the beginning of the article was this statistic. 1 in 5 college students has a diagnosable mental health disorder.
It's a staggering statistic.
It is. I mean, 1 in 5. That's like, if you think about your classes, your friends.
Right.
Like, it's a lot of people who are potentially struggling and silently, yeah.
Yeah.
So then the article goes on to talk about, like, okay, so if these issues aren't addressed, what are the consequences?
Right. Well, the consequences can be really significant. I mean, it can derail a student's entire academic journey. You know, we're talking about problems with concentration difficulty, attending classes, falling behind on assignments, and in some cases, it can even lead to students dropping out entirely.
Yeah, it's almost like a domino effect. You know, one thing leads to another, and then
it can snowball. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not always easy to see the signs either.
Right.
Because mental health challenges can present differently in different people.
So true. You know, some students may become withdrawn and isolated, while others might seem more irritable or have sudden changes in their academic performance.
Yeah, so it's really about being aware of those individual differences. And then, of course, the article dives into the whole issue of stigma and how it prevents students from seeking help.
Oh, it's a huge barrier. And I think the article does a great job of highlighting how many students are afraid to seek help because they worry about being judged or labeled.
Yeah, there's this quote that really stuck with me. One of the students said something like, I didn't want to tell anyone because I thought they'd think I was weak or that I couldn't handle the pressure.
And that's a sentiment we hear far too often. You know, stigma creates this invisible wall that prevents people from acknowledging their struggles and getting the support they need.
It's like trying to climb a mountain, but you've got this heavy backpack full of doubts and fears.
Great analogy.
So how do we, take off that backpack? How do we break down that wall? Well, the European Association for Higher Education Advancement suggests creating a culture of acceptance and understanding.
I love that.
Within educational institutions. But, what does that actually look like?
All right. Well, it's about going beyond those surface level conversations about mental health and really fostering an environment where it's openly discussed, you know, not whispered about in hushed tones. It's about educating everyone, students, faculty, and staff about mental health and encouraging open and honest conversations while challenging those harmful misconceptions.
So it's like making mental health a normal part of the conversation.
Exactly. Not something to be ashamed of. Yeah. It's not a weakness. It's a part of life.
Part of life.
Being human.
So how do we actually do that? How do we get to that point?
Well, it requires a multifaceted approach. We need to dispel the myths surrounding mental health by providing accurate information, cultivate empathy by sharing personal stories when appropriate, and actively challenge any discriminatory language or behavior.
So it's creating a space where students feel like they can speak up.
Exactly. A space where vulnerability is seen as strength, not weakness.
That's so important. I love that.
Yeah, but changing attitudes is just one part of the puzzle. Yeah. You know, we need to back that up with tangible support systems.
Okay, so let's get to the good stuff. What kind of support systems are we talking about?
Well, the article highlights 2 really effective options: counseling services and support groups.
Okay, so tell me more about those.
Sure, counseling services staffed by trained professionals offer students a safe and confidential space to work through a wide range of challenges, whether it's stress, anxiety, relationship difficulties, or more serious mental health concerns.
So it's like having a guide to help you navigate all the ups and downs.
I like that analogy.
Of student life.
Yeah.
Especially those emotional ones.
Yeah, and then there are support groups, which offer a different but equally valuable type of support. They provide a space for students to connect with others who understand what they're going through.
The shared experience can be so powerful.
Absolutely. It can reduce feelings of isolation and help students realize that they're not alone in their struggles.
Yeah, it's all about normalizing the experience.
Exactly. And, we can't just set up these services and expect students to magically know about them or feel comfortable using them.
Right, you build it, they won't necessarily come.
Yeah. So how do we make sure students are aware of these resources and actually utilize them?
Yeah, that's a great question.
That's where education and prevention come in.
Okay.
The article really emphasizes the need to be proactive and equip students with the knowledge and skills they need to take care of their mental health.
I love that idea. Instead of just waiting for problems to arise, let's give students the tools.
Exactly. Empower them
Yeah.
to be proactive.
So what does that look like in practice?
Well, it could involve workshops on stress management techniques, self-care strategies, building resilience, and even just providing clear information on available resources and how to access them.
Yeah, it's like giving them a mental health toolkit,
I love that.
so they know what to do when they're feeling overwhelmed or stressed.
Exactly. And the article really stresses the importance of making this information readily accessible both online and throughout the campus.
Yeah, it should be as easy to find as the library or the cafeteria.
Absolutely. Mental health support shouldn't be hidden away. It should be woven into the fabric of campus life.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground here. The prevalence of these challenges, the stigma, the importance of support systems and being proactive. But I want to bring it back to our listeners for a second.
Yes.
Why should they care about this?
Because this isn't just some abstract concept. It's about real people, real lives.
Right.
Whether you're a student yourself, a parent, an educator, or just a member of society, we all have a role to play in supporting student mental health.
Yeah, it's not just about damage control. It's about creating a world where students can thrive and reach their full potential.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
So as we wrap up part 1 of this deep dive, I want to leave you with a question to ponder. If you're a student, how can you advocate for better mental health support within your own institution? What steps can you take to chip away at the stigma and make your campus a more welcoming and inclusive place for everyone?
It's a great question and one that I hope our listeners will really take some time to consider.
We'll delve deeper into specific strategies and explore the role of institutions in part 2. But for now, I encourage you to reflect on that question and think about the role you can play in creating positive change.
It's going to be an exciting discussion.
So stay tuned.
Welcome back to our deep dive into student mental health. We're going to keep picking apart this article from the European Association for Higher Education Advancement.
Yeah, and with part 1, we really focused on, the scope of the problem, how many students are actually struggling with mental health challenges, the stigma that prevents them from seeking help,
Yes.
and the importance of, having support systems and being proactive.
Right. And now it's time to get into the nitty-gritty of solutions.
Yeah.
It's not enough to just talk about the problem we have, to actually do something about it.
Exactly. So where do we begin? What are some concrete steps institutions can take to create a more supportive environment for their students?
Well, one of the most important things is fostering a sense of belonging and community. The article really emphasizes the need for students to feel connected, not just to their peers, but also to faculty and staff.
It's about making sure that students don't feel like they're going through this alone.
Exactly. And there are so many ways institutions can do this, things like orientation programs that really focus on building relationships,
Yeah.
peer mentoring programs that connect new students with more experienced students.
I love peer mentoring. It's like having a built-in buddy who can show you the ropes and, offer support.
Right, and it helps normalize the idea of seeking help. When students see their peers reaching out for support, it becomes less taboo.
Yeah, like it's okay to not be okay, and it's okay to ask for help.
Exactly. And that brings us to another really important point, the role of faculty and staff.
Yeah, because they're the ones who are interacting with students on a daily basis, right?
Exactly. They're often the first to notice if a student is struggling or if their behavior or academic performance changes.
So they're kind of like the front line in a way.
Exactly. So it's crucial that they have the right training, so they can identify students who might need help and connect them with the right resources.
So we're not just talking about having the resources available. It's about making sure that the people who are interacting with students know how to use them.
Right. And this training should cover a lot of different things, like understanding different mental health challenges, how to communicate effectively with students who are struggling.
Yeah. And how to create a safe and supportive environment for them to open up.
Exactly. But it's not just about individual actions. We need to look at the bigger picture and think about institutional policies and practices.
Okay, so give me some examples of what that looks like.
Well, one really important thing is ensuring that mental health services are accessible and affordable for all students.
Like providing on-campus counseling, offering financial assistance for therapy, maybe partnering with community organizations to expand access to care.
Exactly. It's about removing those barriers that often prevent students from seeking help.
Yeah, like cost transportation, long wait times.
Right. And we also need to think about academic accommodations. Students who are dealing with mental health challenges might need some flexibility with their coursework and exams.
Like extending deadlines, allowing them to take breaks during exams, maybe even taking it incomplete in a course.
Exactly. And it's so important to have clear policies in place so students know what their options are and how to access those accommodations.
It's about making it easy for them to get the support they need without having to jump through a bunch of hoops.
Exactly. And it goes back to that whole idea of creating a culture where students feel comfortable disclosing their needs and asking for help.
Right, where they don't feel like they're going to be penalized or judged for struggling.
Exactly. And, we talked about education and awareness before.
Yeah, let's dive a little deeper into that. How can institutions really raise awareness about mental health and encourage students to seek help when they need it?
Well, one effective strategy is integrating mental health education into the curriculum. In incorporating these topics into existing courses, or maybe even developing specific courses focused on mental health and well-being.
Yeah, so it becomes a normal part of the learning experience.
Right. Students learn about different mental health challenges. They learn how to manage stress. They learn how to take care of themselves.
They learn that it's okay to not be okay.
Exactly. And beyond the curriculum, institutions can do a lot of other things to raise awareness, too.
Like what?
Hosting events and workshops, launching campaigns specifically focused on mental health, inviting guest speakers who can share their expertise.
Partnering with student organizations, maybe.
Absolutely. It's about making mental health a visible and integral part of campus life.
Yeah, not just something that's hidden away or only talked about in hushed tones.
Exactly. Get creative use, social media, organize mental health awareness walks, maybe even incorporate mental health themes into campus events and activities.
So many possibilities.
So many possibilities, and I think it's important to remember that there's no one-size-fits-all approach. What works for one institution might not work for another.
Right. It's about finding what resonates with your students and your campus culture.
Exactly. But amidst all these different strategies, I think the most important thing is creating a holistic ecosystem where all of these elements work together to support student mental health.
It's about creating an environment where mental health isn't just an afterthought, but a core value embedded in everything from policies to everyday interactions.
Exactly. And, we can't forget about the role of the broader community.
Yeah, that's an important point. How can we involve families, community organizations, mental health professionals in this effort?
Well, it starts with collaboration. Institutions need to partner with these groups to create a more comprehensive support system that extends beyond the campus.
So we're talking about breaking down silos and working together to create a more supportive and inclusive environment for all students.
Exactly, because ultimately this isn't just about helping individual students, it's about investing in the future of our society.
Yeah, when we support student mental health,
Yeah.
we're nurturing the next generation of leaders, innovators, and compassionate citizens.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Welcome back to our deep dive. It feels like we've covered so much ground already in parts 1 and 2.
We have. We've talked about the scope of student mental health challenges and the stigma surrounding seeking help, but we've also dug into some really practical strategies for creating that supportive campus environment that's so crucial.
Yeah, I mean, from those really impactful statistics
Right.
to those tangible solutions, it's been a really insightful journey so far. But for this last part, I'm really excited to kind of shift our focus to the future. Like, where do we go from here?
Yeah, let's talk about the exciting new developments on the horizon, the innovative approaches that have the potential to really revolutionize how we support student mental health.
And when I think about the future of this field, one thing that immediately springs to mind is technology. There's this whole wave of digital tools and resources being created specifically for mental well-being.
It's true, and it's a landscape that's evolving at an incredible pace.
Yeah.
We're seeing more and more mental health apps, online therapy platforms, even virtual reality experiences that are offering students these new and more accessible ways to connect with support, build coping skills, and manage their mental health.
It's like having a mental health support system right there in your pocket,
Yeah,
available whenever you need it.
that's a great way to put it. And these digital tools, they offer some unique advantages. They can be accessed anytime, anywhere, which is so important for students who might not feel comfortable seeking help in person or who have really demanding schedules.
Yeah, I mean, having to physically go somewhere or make an appointment during limited hours can be a real barrier for some people.
Absolutely. And many of these apps and platforms offer a degree of anonymity, which can be really reassuring for students who are worried about privacy or that stigma we talked about earlier.
So it's all about creating those options that feel safe and convenient.
Exactly.
Can you give us some specific examples of these digital tools? Like, what are we actually talking about here?
Sure. So there are mindfulness and meditation apps that guide you through techniques to reduce stress and anxiety. There are apps that use cognitive behavioral therapy or CBT principles to help users identify and challenge those negative thought patterns and develop healthier coping mechanisms.
I can see how those would be really helpful for students,
Yeah.
especially when they're dealing with exam stress or just feeling overwhelmed by all the pressures of college life.
Absolutely. And then there are platforms that connect students with licensed therapists for online therapy sessions, which is a great option for students who want a more personalized and in-depth approach to their mental health care.
So it's expanding access to those professional services for people who might not have had it otherwise.
Exactly. And it's important to note that these digital tools aren't meant to replace traditional forms of mental health care like in-person therapy or counseling, but they can be an amazing complement, offering additional layers of support.
It's about meeting students where they are and providing them with choices that fit their individual needs and preferences.
Precisely. And we're just scratching the surface here. The possibilities are really limitless. We're starting to see AI chatbots that can provide immediate support and guidance, and even virtual reality experiences that can help students practice social skills or manage anxiety in simulated environments.
It's like we're on the cusp of a whole new era in mental health care, and technology is leading the way. But with all these advancements, it's important to proceed with caution, right?
Oh, absolutely. We need to make sure that these digital tools are based on solid evidence and meet the highest standards for safety and effectiveness. And of course, we have to address those very valid concerns about data privacy and security to protect student information.
It's like with any new technology, we have to approach it thoughtfully and critically, recognizing both the incredible potential and the potential risks.
Exactly. But I truly believe that with careful consideration and responsible development, technology has the power to completely transform how we support student mental health. We can create a system of care that's more accessible, more inclusive, and ultimately more effective.
I'm excited to see how this all unfolds. So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the one key message you want our listeners to take away from our conversation today?
The one message I would want everyone to remember is that supporting student mental health, it's a collective effort. It requires a multifaceted approach, a commitment from everyone involved, and a willingness to embrace innovation and new ideas.
It's not about quick fixes, but about cultivating a culture of well-being where students feel supported and empowered to thrive. A huge thank you to the European Association for Higher Education Advancement for bringing this crucial issue to the forefront.
And thank you to our listeners for joining us on this deep dive. Remember, you're not alone, and there's always help available.
Please don't forget to follow the European Association for Higher Education Advancement on YouTube and social media.